This tutorial is all you will ever need when it comes down to masking in Lightroom. I have spent so much time over the past few years searching for masking tutorials to get better and to spice up my knowledge. And there are a lot of good ones out there. But to save you some time and effort digging deep into YouTube's treasures, I have created this video. An in-depth tutorial where I will go through every single masking tool Lightroom has to offer and to show you some examples for when to use them. For that, I'll provide you with a link for some of my most recent raw images so you can follow along step by step. First link in the description. So let's get started. So we are in Lightroom right now and I'm gonna show you the masking tools on these images here that you can download. On this first image, we're gonna open up the masking tools here on this symbol, click on it. Here are the different masks that you can add, but I'm gonna click on objects, for example, because I want this layout here to open up. And on the plus sign, you have here all the masks. So we're gonna go from top to bottom. The first mask is the select subject one. You can read automatically select the subject in the photo powered by AI. So that means the subject can be yourself or a human, a car, an object or an animal. Whatever it's centered in the frame or what it's in focus, AI will pick as a subject. So if I'm clicking on it, it has selected my body. It's not that accurate as you can see, but you can fix that easily. I'm gonna show you in a minute. So I can just make some changes on the subject. For example, open up the shadows and introduce some whites. Okay, next mask is select sky. Automatically select the sky in a photo as well, powered by AI. So if I'm gonna click on it, it should select the sky here. And it did a pretty good job, but not on my hair. So if I'm zooming in, you can see it is red. If you click on this red square here, you can change the color of the mask. For example, yellow, blue, but I always stick on red and bump up the opacity. So if I'm gonna play with the exposure, just to see what I'm working with, the mask selected my hair as well. How do we fix that? I'll show you in a second on a different photo as well. The next mask is select background, and it's self-explanatory because the select subject mask is selecting myself. So the select background should select the background, and it did a pretty good job. So now I could easily make some changes in the background, for example, make it a bit darker and more vibrant. The next mask is really powerful, select people. It applies edits to people in the photo by selecting their features. So for example, right now, all that it's detecting is myself, of course. If I click on person one, right now I only have body, skin, hair and clothes. But if I would be facing the other way towards the lens, I would have more features here. I would have, for example, lips, eyes, eyebrows and so on. So this mask here comes in handy if you do portraits. The next mask here is object mask, and this is my favorite. So if I'm gonna select the subject again, you can see it also selected the hole here on my hands or on my fingers, as well as here. It's like doing a dirty job, and that's why I love to use the object mask. So if I'm gonna press on it, I can either draw here on the mode, brush select draw with scroll wheel up or down. You can resize it, or you can just do the rectangle select. So you have like an X here, and then you click and hold, drag a square and let go. I usually use the brush tool, but this one should do the job as well, yes. And as you can see, the object mask is pretty accurate when it comes to holes, for example, here on my pants as well. It is a bit dirty here, but you can easily fix that. And for that white part here, you can add a mask, for example, another object mask. Go to the brush here, the brush select, resize it, make it smaller with the scroll wheel down, and now paint on top of it, and it should select this one here. Yeah, it's not doing a great job, but now what we could do is subtract it, and we could subtract this mask from the background. So let's try it, select background, and as you can see, it's cleaning up some of the pixels here. Not everything, but you could go in with a brush and clean it up a bit more. The next mask is a brush mask, and it's self-explanatory. You can size it here as well with the scroll wheel, or just use the sliders here. Feather it out or without feathering. The flow, the density, you can change everything here. And as well as erase it here. I mean, it's self-explanatory, just like paint on Windows. The next mask is the linear gradient, and with the linear gradient masks, I always use it to combine it with other masks to intersect them. So I'm gonna show you real quick. I want to darken up this part here and the sky, so I'm gonna click on the linear gradient. I'm holding and pulling it here. I can feather it with this one here. something like that. Down the exposure, create another linear gradient for the sky. Down the exposure, make it a bit more cool. And another linear gradient to brighten up the left part of the image with the exposure and create some more warmth with the temperature slider. The next mask is a linear gradient, self-explanatory as well, but I can show you a cool trick. I can create this look that I just did with 3 linear gradients, only with 2 radials. So I'm gonna click on the first one, radial gradient, make a square around here, soften it, up the exposure and up the temperature, just like I did a few seconds ago. So now I can just right click on this radial mask, duplicate and invert it. Now I have selected the sky and the foreground that I wanted to darken. So I can just down the exposure here and the temp and play with the mask itself. Now I have just used 2 radial gradients instead of the 3 linear gradients, but I'm creating the same effect. The next mask is the color range, and this one will help us with this image here. Select sky mask, and it did a bad job. So we can fix that easily with the color range. You can select colors by clicking, holding and dragging, making a square or a rectangle. So it selects the color that you want to pick. And now I can see there are some greens as well. I have all the pinks, the reddish tones, but I still need the green ones. So I can click on my mask, hit plus and add the same mask, the color range mask, and create a little square here and refine it. So refine to the left will pick less of the colors and on the right side the opposite, so more of the colors. But I'm gonna leave it at, let's say, 38. I'm gonna grab another color range. The more you grab, the more precise it will get. Refine it again. You can either have this view here or you can have this one here. So now I'm going to go to the overlay here and I'm going to pick the color, let's say green. As you can see, some pink colors are coming out here. So now you know you have to place the rectangle right here. So I'm going to do that. Add another color range mask, rectangle here. Boom, it's gone. Refine it a bit. Okay. Go back to the red color, hit X, close it. I'm going to close this one up as well. So now I'm going to invert the mask by right clicking on it and hit invert. Boom. Now I only have the sky. Okay, it's a bit messed up here. I should have cleaned it up more. So now I could change the color with temp. I can darken up the sky or brighten it up, make it a bit more soft with the clarity and texture, for example. So that's an easy tip how to select the sky if the sky mask is not working. Now, before we're going to the luminance range mask, I'm gonna show you the color range mask on a different photo. On this one here, let me just crop it. And yes, as you can see, there are black borders in some of the images. It is because, as you know me, I use APS-C lenses on my full frame sensor without using the crop mode because I'm either way cropping it in Lightroom. Let's say I want to create some depth here on the side of the building by introducing some light coming in from here. I could now use, for example, my object mask. That's draw where I want the mask to be added to. It's not doing a good job because the sky is here. Let's try it one more time. Hit and miss. I'm gonna be more precise. I only want this part here. That's good. It's still detecting the sky. Okay, what could we do now? If I'm gonna close the masking tools here, as you can see, the building is a bit darker than the sky. I could use now the new mask, for example, the luminance range that we're gonna cover in a second. But for that, I'm gonna use the color range mask. So I'm gonna draw a square here on the darker parts of the blues. It's still picking up the sky, but for that we have the refine tool. And now the sky should disappear the further I go to the left on the refine tool. Okay, that's good. And now quick tip, you can right click on any mask that you have created and intersect it with, for example, a brush, linear gradient. The way I edit my images, as you know me, I'm gonna intersect this mask with a brush. Now I'm brushing in the parts that I want the mask to be applied at, and I'm gonna erase some parts here. I'm just cleaning it up basically, and now I'm gonna intersect it again with a linear gradient coming from the top to the bottom, increasing the exposure and the highlights. I'm expanding the masks here because this eye here, if you click and hold, It's not visible, now it's visible. And this is exactly the effect that I wanted to have. So now I could use some linear gradients, for example, here to open up this image a bit more, shadows, make it a bit warmer. And another linear gradient. And what if I want the yellows to be a bit more orangey? Of course, I could go to the color mixer here and play with the hues, the yellows a bit more to the orange side, the orange more to the red, for example. You know, I could dial it in here, but since we're using masks and it's a masking tutorial, I could go up to the mask, create a color range mask. I'm drawing a rectangle right here on this part, refine it, play with my temp, more orange, and with the tint, more purple, so it gets a bit more red, and the saturation, for example. And with the amount, just for every mask here, whatever mask you're creating, there's always this amount slider. You can, instead of now increasing the saturation and the warmth and such, like so, I can just leave it like that and do all at once with this amount slider. So every slider that I have used will now be increased. And this is the look that I wanted to go for. A bit orange, reddish here, maybe a bit more of the tint. So I have only cropped this image and used masks. Oh wait, no, I used the color mixer. Double tap to reset it. Now I haven't used anything other than cropping the image and all the masks. So if I'm gonna do before and after, look at the difference. With only a few masks. So now let's use this image for the luminance range mask. The luminance range mask is exactly the same as the color range one, but it picks up the luminance of the image. If I'm gonna draw a rectangle here, it's gonna pick this part of the luminance range. And you can see it right here. And with the luminance map. So I don't have to always draw some rectangles. I can easily change the range and the amount here. So left one is all blacks and shadows and this white, just like the histogram. So I only want the sky to be affected, so that means no dark parts. Pulling it up with this arrow here, pulling it up until it is affecting the sky right now. So I'm dialing it back, and now with this one here, it's feathering. So I'm gonna feather it out a bit more, something like that. So now I can just adjust this part of the image. Of course, it's affecting the flowers here because it's in the same luminance range, but I'm just gonna brighten up this image here. And now let's create some depth here with a linear gradient. Boom, down the exposure. And now let's use our beloved color range mask and pick out the greens. Look, I'm just editing this image with only masks, as you can see. So I'm gonna refine it, something around that. And now I'm using the hues to go from a more deep greens to a more orangey greens, filmic greens, as you can say, and desaturating it just a tiny bit. Okay, perfect. Before and after with only what? 3 masks. Before and after. And now I just want to show you how to edit 1 or 2 more images with only masks, okay? So you can get the hang of it. So with this image here, what masks do we have? And before I forget, you can use the depth range mask, for example, if you have photos from your iPhone with the portrait mode, because it uses the depth range of the portrait mode of your iPhone, Samsung, or whatever phone you're using. And since it's a RAW file of my Sony with my manual focus on or autofocus, but it has the baked in focus, I can't use the depth range mask to rearrange the focus. So I could use the object mask here to mask out the leaf and the branch, but since it is in a good focus, I know I can use the subject mask. Yes, it did a pretty good job. Okay, now what I could do, for example, invert it. I'm inverting this mask, down the exposure, temp a bit to the cooler side, and desaturate it a bit, and up the highlights of the snow. And now I'm doing another subject mask here, and now I'm gonna intersect this mask here with a color range mask because I only want the color of the leaf. Okay, boom, no snow detected, only the leaf and some parts of the branch. I can refine it, for example, like so. Now I can up my temp to get more warmth and the tint to make it a bit more reddish, like so. Up the saturation, down the shadows and up the whites, and maybe a bit more texture. Okay, and now let's just use a radial gradient, okay, why not, to have a vignette, something around here, and I'm gonna down the exposure, but yeah, I want a vignette, so I just have to invert this mask here. Boom, now I have a vignette. Changing the exposure a bit, playing with the mask. Now the leaf is a bit dark. That means I can right click on the radial mask and duplicate and invert this mask so it's in the exact same spot here, and just increase the exposure and maybe the highlights as well. And now 4 masks I have created. I'm gonna show you the before and after. That's insane what masks can do. And now I'm just gonna play with this image here with only masks. Oh, and of course cropping because of my lens. I'm gonna use a Instagram story format, 16:9. I'm gonna be really fast now. I'm not touching anything here, only the masks, okay? Subject mask, it should do a good job. Will it do a good job? It's not doing a great job, so I'm gonna go with the object mask. Object mask never disappoints me, watch. I'm telling you. Now I'm gonna invert it, desaturate it, down the exposure so the cat will be in focus more. I'm gonna create another object mask for my cat. I could have duplicated and inverted this mask, so I already have the mask with the cat, but yeah, my fault. So now I have it. Up the exposure a bit, down the highlights, up the shadows a bit. I'm gonna use a brush, zoom in, boom, a bit more tint towards green, so I have a tealish blue. Okay, I have changed my mind. I went back to this mask here to up the exposure a bit more and play with the temp. I want a blue and orange type of look, so I'm gonna down the temp towards the blue side of things, so the leaves will have a bit more green and blue tint to them. And I'm gonna up the saturation. The sun is missing, so I'm gonna create an artificial sun with the radial gradient. Sun, let's say, is coming from here. Up the exposure, quite a bunch. Up the whites, make it a bit more warmer. And now, quick tip, I'm gonna select the cat again. I can right click on this mask here, duplicate it, but then I have to reset everything that I did because it's duplicating it. Just double tap on everything here, 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 texture clarity. And now I'm gonna intersect this mask here with a brush. Trust me on that. Zoom in, size it up, the brush, paint gently here. Okay, we're gonna create some sort of a rim light, maybe here a bit more. Okay, zoom out, up the exposure a tiny bit. Now we've created a rim light, and before and after with only using masks again. That's the power of masks. If you know some techniques that I haven't covered in this video, then write them down in the comments so you can help me out with some knowledge. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.